Very well, Mr. Cooper.
Good morning again, Judge Walker, and may it please the court. On November 4th, 2008, 14 million Californians went to the polls to cast their ballots on an issue of overriding social and cultural importance: whether the institution of marriage should be redefined to include couples of the same sex. Over 52% of those Californians voted to restore and preserve the traditional definition of marriage as the union of a man and a woman, a definition that has prevailed in virtually every society in recorded history since long before the advent of modern religions. And in passing Proposition 8, California joined 28 sister states that have in recent years enshrined the traditional definition of marriage in their constitutions. And many more states and the federal government have enacted clarifying statutes to the same effect. Only 5 states, Your Honor, have opened the institution of marriage to same-sex couples, and 3 of those had it imposed upon them by judges. Indeed, that's how same-sex marriage came to California, in a highly controversial 4-3 decision in which the California Supreme Court purported to apply the people's will, a decision that had reversed the Court of Appeals in California, which had ruled to uphold the traditional definition of marriage. 5 months later, after the California Supreme Court's decision, on Election Day, the people took up the issue into their own hands, and they corrected the California Supreme Court's misunderstanding. While the people of California have been steadfast in their support for the traditional definition of marriage, they have also been generous, Your Honor, in extending rights, benefits, and protections to the state's gay and lesbian population. Indeed, except for the denomination of marriage for same-sex relationships, gays and lesbians in California have been immensely successful in obtaining their policy goals through the political process. As Equality California, a leading gay and lesbian rights organization, has explained, California has some of the most comprehensive civil rights protections for gays and lesbians in the nation. In addition to enacting sweeping anti-discrimination protections, California has long recognized same-sex relationships through domestic partnerships. In 1999, California became one of the first states in the country to allow cohabitating adults of the same sex to establish a domestic partnership. And today, domestic partnerships broadly grant to same-sex couples virtually all of the substantive legal rights and benefits enjoyed by opposite-sex couples. Indeed, Equality California and many other gay rights organizations helped to write the 2003 legislation that extended the rights and benefits of marriage to domestic partners. And the group hailed the bill's enactment into law as a tremendous civil rights victory for the LGBT community. Now, Your Honor, gays and lesbians have secured these and many other legislative victories by mobilizing a strong and growing coalition of supporters. This coalition includes the state's largest daily newspapers, many of California's leading corporations, Hollywood, organized labor, a number of religious groups and leaders, and elected officials, among many, many others. In short, Your Honor, the evidence will show that California's gay and lesbian community has substantial political power and that California is strongly supportive of gay and lesbian rights, more so than perhaps any other state in the country. Now, against this backdrop, the support of Californians, not once in passage of Proposition 8, but twice recently in the prior passage of Proposition 22, bespeaks not ill will or animosity towards gays and lesbians, but rather a special regard for this venerable institution. Rabbi Michael Lerner, a staunch supporter of same-sex marriage, has said this: "The fact is there are millions of Americans who believe in equal rights for gays and lesbians, but draw the line at marriage." Countless people can hear themselves described by these words, Your Honor. Among those who have drawn that line is President Obama, who said this during his presidential campaign: "I believe that civil unions include the same legal rights that accompany a marriage license. However, I do not support gay marriage. Marriage has religious and social connotations, and I consider marriage to be between a man and a woman. To be sure, Your Honor, traditional marriage, as President Obama noted, has ancient and powerful religious connotations, as Mr. Olson also mentioned. And it is true that Proposition 8 was actively and vocally supported by many from the faith community, although a
Mr. Olson made the point that if the president's parents had been in Virginia at the time of his birth, their marriage would have been unlawful. Now, that indicates there's been quite a change in the understanding of people's entitlement to enter into the institution of marriage. And so his argument here is that we've had a similar evolution or change in the understanding with respect to people of the same sex entering into the marriage institution. Isn't it? Isn't that, counsel, correct?
Your Honor, racial restrictions were never a definitional feature of the institution of marriage. They were never. At the time that Loving was decided, there were but 15 states or so left that included those loathsome restrictions. The racial restrictions were clearly a product of white supremacy doctrine and were plainly violations of the Equal Protection Clause, the core purpose of which was to eliminate racial restrictions of generally, but precisely that kind of detail. The limitation of marriage to a man and a woman is something that has been universal. It has, and it has been across history, across cultures, across society. The loathsome restrictions based on race are of an entirely different nature.
What's the evidence going to show that they are of a different nature, that these racial restrictions are different? As a matter of fact, from the restrictions against same-sex marriage?
Your Honor, the evidence is going to show, with respect to what we submit to you is the central societal public purpose and state interest in connection with marriage. Racial restrictions, the racial restrictions that had nothing to do with the definitional feature of marriage, is between a man and a woman. And the purpose of this institution of marriage, the central purpose, is to promote procreation, to channel narrowly procreative sexual activity between men and women into stable, enduring unions of...
Is that the only purpose of marriage?
Your Honor, it is the central and, we would submit, defining purpose of marriage. It is the basis on which and the reason on which marriage as an institution has been universal across societies and cultures throughout history. Two, because it is a pro-child societal institution. The evidence will show...
Where do the other values associated with marriage come in? Companionship, support, all of those things that attend to marriage that have nothing to do with procreation. What is the evidence going to show? That those are secondary, those unimportant values associated with marriage?
What it's going to show, Your Honor, is that this debate goes to the definition of marriage and what its purpose is. Whether it's going to be effectively disinstitutionalized,
I was going to ask, where's the evidence? That you use that in your proposed finding that extending marriage to same-sex couples would, and I quote, radically alter the institution of marriage. Okay. What's the evidence going to show that would support that finding?
Your Honor, it's going to show, and in the form of our expert David Blankenhorn, he will testify that a broad consensus of leading scholars suggests that across history and cultures, marriage is fundamentally a pro-child social institution anchored in socially approved sexual intercourse between a man and a woman. And the core need that marriage, he will testify, aims to meet is the child's need to be emotionally, morally, practically, and legally affiliated with the woman and the man whose sexual union brought the child into the world. Your Honor, the evidence is going to show that. Again, marriage is and always has been designated to channel the naturally procreative sexual relationships of men and women into these enduring, stable unions. It will show that it's good for the child because it increases the chances the child will be raised by both its mother and its father. It's good for the mother, who is less likely to raise the child by herself, and it's good for the father because it establishes and fixes his rights in and obligations to his child. But perhaps most importantly, Your Honor, from the state's perspective, channeling naturally procreative relationships that into enduring committed marital unions decreases the likelihood that the state itself will have to help provide for the child's upbringing, and that society will suffer the social ills that are often associated with children who are not raised in intact families. President Obama recently noted this reality when he said this: "We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of schools, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison."
How does permitting same-sex couples to marry in any way diminish the procreative aspect or function of marriage or denigrate the institution of marriage for heterosexuals?
Your Honor, because it will change the institution. As you noted in a question, or at least raised in a question to Mr. Olson, it will inevitably change the institution.
What's the evidence going to show in that regard?
The evidence is going to show, again, that the debate is whether or not this institution will remain a pro-child institution, or in the words, or whether the gradual transformation of marriage from a pro-child societal institution into a private relationship designed simply to provide adult couples with what the plaintiffs say is personal fulfillment. The question is, Your Honor, is this institution designed for these pro-child reasons, or is it to produce companionship and personal fulfillment and expression of love? Are those purposes themselves important enough to risk to the accomplishment of the pro-child purposes? The purpose of...
What are those risks?
The risks are, Your Honor, that the nature of the institution will be altered, that it will be deinstitutionalized, that the norms, the laws, the social conventions that have given marriage its structure and that have brought marriage into being, again, across cultures, across societies, and throughout history, to ensure, for the sake of raising children, that the people that brought that child into the world remain together to raise the child. And if the institution is deinstitutionalized, as the scholars say, is gradually happening now, and that is this evidence will be, Your Honor, that this will hasten and perhaps complete that process, then Mr. Blankenhorn will testify that it will likely lead to very real social harms. such as he will testify, lower marriage rates, higher rates of divorce, and non-marital cohabitation, with more children raised outside of marriage and separated from at least one of their parents. Now, the plaintiffs dispute the likelihood that these harms will result from same-sex marriage, and our point, Your Honor, is that they cannot prove that they will not flow from legalizing same-sex marriage. The same-sex marriage is simply too novel an experiment at this stage to allow for any firm conclusions, Your Honor, about its long-term effect on traditional marriage and the societal interests.
Excuse me.
Yes, no, please.
Is there any evidence from the counties, the states that have permitted same-sex couples to marry that marriage has been deinstitutionalized or has led to lower marriage rates or higher rates of divorce or greater incidence of non-marital cohabitation, these other matters that you've described?
Your Honor, there is evidence on this, and we believe the evidence will show that these phenomenon have followed and have been associated with and part of the deinstitutionalization of marriage in other countries.
And what will that evidence be?
Your Honor, I believe the evidence will show that in the Netherlands, marital rates have declined. Rates with respect to the cohabitation of couples with children have risen. These are phenomena, Your Honor, that even with respect to the foreign countries, and Netherlands was the first country, so I think the evidence with respect to it has had the longest period to develop. But even with respect to it, Your Honor.
Which evidence or which witness is going to speak to this?
The plaintiffs have actually witnesses who speak to this.
To the experience in the Netherlands?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
But my point, Your Honor, is that with respect to the foreign countries where there is a greater body of experience, or at least a longer period of experience, confident and reliable judgment simply cannot be made. And the institution of marriage is too vital to ask the people of California or any other state to proceed without having collected that evidence and having been able to determine for themselves whether or not, indeed, represents no threat to any of the social interests that they believe are important, or whether, in fact, perhaps it does. The people of California are entitled to await the results of that experiment in those few places where it is being tried. 5 states very recently in this country, only 7 countries throughout the world, Your Honor, they are entitled to await the results and assess them before they make a fundamental change and alteration in the traditional definition of marriage.
You use the term in your proposed findings sexual embodiment as distinguished from sexual orientation. What is the evidence going to show that the term sexual embodiment means?
Your Honor, I believe that evidence will show, and I believe that evidence will show from, again, Mr. Blankenhorn, that marriage is essentially the sexual embodiment of the man and the woman who form the marital union. It is the sexual embodiment that defines the institution. It is the reality that only that naturally procreative conduct will bring forward life, and it is the purpose of marriage, the central purpose of marriage, Your Honor, to ensure that when, or at least to encourage and to support and to promote that when that life is brought into being, it is brought into being by parents who are together, who are married, and who have taken responsibility to raise that child.
You stated in one of the proposed findings that Extending marriage to same-sex couples would increase the likelihood that bisexual orientation could form a basis for legal entitlement to group marriage. What's the evidence that would support that proposed finding?
Your Honor, I think that it is. I think that it is a legal proposition found.
It sounds like a finding of fact to me. That's what you proposed it as.
I think it flows from logical precepts, Your Honor, that if an individual has a right to marry the person of his choice or her choice in order to express their love for that person, and that a public recognition of that love and to realize that personal fulfillment that comes from that, if that is the overriding purpose of marriage, then it seems very difficult to say to someone who is a bisexual, if that individual loves two people, one person or both sexes, that that individual doesn't have, and those individuals do not have the same right to express their love and to have their love recognized by the state in order that they too may achieve personal fulfillment. That is a proposition that we believe
That would assume,
that
of
if
course,
the plaintiffs
simultaneous.
Yes. Yes, it would, Your Honor. And that's not far-fetched assumption in light of some modern conceptions of family, as the evidence there also will show.
That's not unheard of amongst heterosexual, is it?
And, Your Honor, the traditional age-old limitation of marriage to one man and one woman is worth preserving for that reason as well.
One of your proposed findings is, and I quote, the recognition of same-sex marriage could end or significantly dilute the public socialization of heterosexual young people into a marriage culture. What's the evidence going to show on that?
Your Honor, it will show, and again through the testimony of Mr. Blankenhorn, that the deinstitutionalization of this institution, of the institution of marriage, will hasten what we have seen with respect to the institution over the years. That is, that marriage rates have declined in this country. Cohabitation rates have increased. To whatever extent, Your Honor, the traditional and overriding purpose, and that is the procreative and responsible procreation purposes of marriage, are diluted, and marriage as a pro-child social institution is diluted and weakened. The result that you suggested in that finding of fact, we believe, and the evidence will show, and the testimony will be that will follow, or at least that will likely follow. Again, Your Honor, the reality is that you will hear nothing but predictions in this trial about what that long-term effects of adopting same-sex marriage will be on the institution of marriage itself and on the social purposes that it serves. You will hear nothing but predictions, because it is not possible to render reliable and certain judgments on these things. And that, if for no other reason, is reason enough for the people of California to await until confident and reliable understandings can be developed on what those realities are. Your Honor, in the sum, we submit to you that the evidence will demonstrate that the plaintiff's claims that Proposition 8 and the traditional definition of marriage are the products of animosity and that there is no legitimate public policy reason for supporting the traditional definition of marriage are unsupported and unsupportable. In fact, Your Honor, with respect to the notion that this traditional definition has been restored to California law by Proposition 8 serves no good policy, public policy reason, secular public policy reason, which Mr. Olson was emphatic about, simply can't stand up to the evidence of the ages. it wasn't a coincidence that every society and every culture throughout history has adopted, nurtured, protected this
Well,
institution.
he has made the point, however, that this institution has not been static, that it's evolved rather dramatically in all sorts of ways. What precludes this institution from evolving to comprehend marriage among same-sex couples?
Your Honor, nothing precludes it. There are two states where the people, or their representatives anyway in this country, have embraced it and have undertaken it. We would submit, experiment with this proposition. It is within the permissible political and democratic judgment of the people to make that change. And Mr. Olson spoke movingly about the change in attitudes over time. There is no question that that is true, that is true. Proposition 22 in this state, the statutory measure, was passed overwhelmingly. Proposition 8 was passed by a substantial minority, but nothing like Proposition 22 had. Attitudes do change. And the political process, not you, not the members of the Ninth Circuit, and not even the justices of the United States Supreme Court are here to reflect the attitudes of the American people. That's what we have ballot booths for, Your Honor, and so nothing precludes it. The question is whether anything in our Constitution insists on it. Whether anything in our Constitution takes that issue out of the hands of the people of California and the people of the neighboring states to California and the people of my home state and says, this is what the Constitution demands. You have no say in it.
There are certainly lots of issues that are taken out of the hands of the body politic and put in the hands of judges who interpret the Constitution. Why isn't this one of them?
Your Honor, it's not one of them because the legal predicates of the plaintiff's case are not sound.
The factual predicates.
No, the legal predicates, Your Honor, the legal predicates. We have already, and our summary judgment herein, Your Honor, and argued that out at great length. But our legal proposition is that the 14th Amendment does not address and govern this issue and does not take this issue out of the hands of the democratic, out of the hands of the people in the democratic process. It does not require, as it did in Loving, when it said the Equal Protection Clause was designed to eliminate racial distinctions. Racial distinctions that, by the way, are irrelevant to any purpose of marriage. The ones that I believe, and I believe the majority of Californians believe to be central, or even the ones that the plaintiffs believe, it's irrelevant to any purpose.
Didn't Mr. Olson mention other restrictions or prohibitions that have been found to be constitutionally infirm?
Mr. Olson mentioned, I think he was referring to some of the restrictions that many marriage regimes have placed on the wife in that regime, and that, yes, those have been very substantially eliminated, and nobody here is going to lament the fact, Your Honor. Most of those, I think California's civil law tradition is one that largely avoided some of the most egregious oppressions of women in the marital relationship that certainly tarnished the marriage restrictions of many states. But those restrictions, Your Honor, have largely fallen away through the legislative process. Those, the legislators over time, quite properly eliminated those. I don't have a brief for the proposition that those restrictions could survive constitutional analysis. I don't entertain much doubt that they could not. But those two, Your Honor, are not by any means definitional features of the institution of marriage. The man-woman definition of marriage. And, Your Honor, the racial restriction in Lovin was at war with the central purpose of marriage as we are submitting to you. You had a situation where two individuals whose sexual relations would narrowly lead to procreation, and yet the state forbade those individuals from forming a marital union and therefore from establishing the stable and enduring marital relationship that the state otherwise sought to promote. So, Your Honor, change. The change in attitudes that Mr. Olson mentioned is not a reason that the Constitution has somehow changed to ordain the result he seeks. It's a reason, and he has spoken eloquently to many reasons, why the people of California, perhaps the people of other states in this country, should consider his arguments the next time the issue is before them in the political process and the democratic process. Your Honor, I will sum up by saying simply this, that the evidence we believe, Your Honor, will demonstrate again that the plaintiff's claims that Proposition 8 and the traditional definition of marriage that is restored to California law, that their claims that Proposition 8 is the product of animosity and that there can be no possible legitimate explanation for that traditional definition of marriage are unsupported and they are unsupportable. The people of California were entitled to make this critical decision for themselves, and they have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I believe those are the opening statements, and we will now take a break until 10 minutes after the hour. Who's taking on the first witness?
I am, Your Honor.
Very well, Mr. Boies. And your first witness will be?
Mr. Jeffrey Zarrillo.
Very well, Mr. Boies, your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We call Jeffrey Zarrillo.
Thank you. State your name, please.
Jeffrey Zarrillo.
Spell your last name.
It's Zarrillo.
And your first name.
Jeffrey is Jeffrey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Boies?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Zarrillo.
Good morning, David.
Let me begin by asking you to tell the court a little bit about yourself. How old are you?
I'm 36 years old.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey.
And how long have you been in California?
I've been in California since 1999.
Do you have any other siblings?
I have one brother.
And tell me about your parents. Are they married?
My parents have been married for 41 years.
And is your brother married?
Yes, my brother has been married for just about 14 years.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school in Brick Township High School in Brick, New Jersey.
Did you go to college?
Yes, I did. I graduated from Montclair State University in Upper Montclair, New Jersey in 1995.
Are you employed?
Yes, I am.
What do you do?
I work for AMC Entertainment Incorporated.
How long have you done that?
It's the only job I've ever had, for 21 years.
How did you start?
I started as a ticket taker and worked my way up to general manager of operations, which I currently am today.
Are you gay?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been gay?
About as long as I can remember.
How long have you been openly gay?
I came out in stages. I came out to some coworkers and some friends that I had in California when I was 25. And ultimately, I came out to my friends and family in New Jersey when I was just about 30.
Why did it take you so long?
Coming out is a very personal and internal process. Excuse me. you have to get to the point where you're comfortable with yourself and with your own identity and who you are. And so it was difficult where I grew up with peer pressure and the things that you hear and the things that you see and the things that you read about with regards to the gay and lesbian community and what coming out means and that process that people go through. And it changes you. I mean, ultimately, you get to a point where you're comfortable with that, with yourself. But previously, when you're going through that process of deciding whether to come out, your thought process includes what other people think of you, with what other people think of you coming out, and that's not what it's about. It's not about anybody else at that time. It's about me and how I felt growing up in society with all the stereotypes and hate that existed.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what you were referring to when you talked about what you read and what you heard and the stereotypes that you were faced with.
Well, I think we can all remember times in school, whether it be grammar school or middle school, high school or college, and it didn't necessarily have to be about gay issues, but the peer pressure and the things that our friends and our acquaintances in school say, and especially when many of my friends, when I was going through this internal process, identified themselves as straight and were dating women and asking girls to the prom and to school dances, and that was tough for me. I'm someone who really wanted to go out for the football team, but I was afraid to be with men in the locker room.
What were some of the things that you heard and read about gays and the stereotypes that you mentioned that caused you concern before you came out?
Objection. Hearsay?
I beg your pardon?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
I think it goes to the mental impressions of the witness's state of mind. Objection overruled.
I can remember specific times watching TV. I don't recall the name of the specific after-school special, but there was an after-school special about a child who had come out to his parents, and he was kicked out of his home and told by his parents that they didn't love him, not to come back. And I remember seeing a soap opera called One Life to Live when I was in middle school, and there was Ryan Phillippe played a gay kid on the show, and it was a similar situation where he found that it was so hard to come out in his community and in his home, and he was ultimately kicked out of his home by his father because his father didn't approve of him.
Mm-hmm. Now, today you are in a committed relationship with another gay man, correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little about that man.
He's the love of my life. I love him probably more than I love myself. I would do anything for him. I would put his needs ahead of my own. I would be with him in sickness and health, for richer, for poorer, death do us part, just like vows. I would do anything for him, and I want nothing more than to marry him.
How long have you been in this relationship?
March will be 9 years.
And when you said you want nothing more than to marry him, why?
The word marriage has a special meaning. It's why we're here today. If it wasn't important, we wouldn't be here today. I want to be able to share that joy and that happiness that my parents felt and that my brother felt and my coworkers and my friends and my neighbors, of having the opportunity to be married. It's the next logical step for us.
Do you believe that, excuse me, if you are married, that would change the relationship that you have at all?
Oh, absolutely. I think one's capacity to love can absolutely grow. I think one's capacity to be committed to another individual can absolutely expand, and I'm confident that would happen with us.
Do you believe that if you were able to be married, that that would affect your relationships with your family and with your community?
Yeah, absolutely.
How so?
It's that I would be able to partake in family gatherings, gatherings with friends, work functions as a married individual, and to be to stand alongside my parents and my brother and his wife, and to be able to stand there as one family who have all had the opportunity to take advantage of being married, and the pride that one feels when that happens.
Do you believe that if you were married, that would affect the way other people who don't know you deal with you?
Oh, sure.
Why?
When someone is married, and whether it's an introduction to a stranger or someone noticing my ring, something of that nature, it says to them, these individuals are serious. These individuals are committed to one another. They've taken a step to be involved in a relationship that one hopes will last for the rest of their lives.
Now, do you have children?
No.
Have you thought about having children?
Yes, we have.
Have you talked about having children, the two of you?
Yes.
And why haven't you had children?
Paul and I believe that the important step in order to have children would be for us to be married. It would make it easier for us, easier for our children to explain our relationship, for our children to explain our relationship. But also, it would afford us additional protections for our child. And knowing if we're going to enter into that type of family institution, that we want to make sure that we have all of the protections so that nothing could ever eradicate that nuclear family.
Now, you are aware that in the state of California, you could register with the state of California as domestic partners, correct?
Yes, I am.
Have you done so?
No, I have not. No, we have not.
And why not?
Domestic partnership would relegate me to a level of second-class citizenship, maybe even third-class citizenship, currently, the way things are in California today. And that's not enough. It's giving me a part of the pie, but not the whole thing. And while it's an obvious opportunity for us to do that, we hold marriage in such high regard that if we were to get married, we would be saying that we are satisfied with domestic partnership as a way of living our lives, but it doesn't give due respect to the relationship that we've had for almost 9 years. Only marriage can do that.
Do you have friends who are registered as domestic partners under the state of California law?
Probably. It's not something that's talked about.
Do any of your friends celebrate anniversaries of registering as domestic partners?
No?
That sort of thing?
No.
Now, how does not being married affect you in your life? Does it subject you to further discrimination?
Yes, it does.
How so?
The discrimination, whether directly or indirectly, it's pervasive, especially since Prop 8. Prop 8 has emboldened other states to take similar actions, and that makes it difficult. You can't turn on the TV without seeing a news story. You can't log onto the internet without reading a news story about it. You can't open a magazine or read a blog. I mean, it's everywhere. And those are daily reminders of what I can't have.
Have you encountered instances where, because you are not married, you were placed in embarrassing or awkward situations?
Yes, I have.
Can you give me some examples?
One example is that when Paul and I travel, it's always an awkward situation at the front desk at a hotel. There's on numerous occasions where the individual working at the desk will look at us with a perplexed look on his face and say, hey, you ordered a king-size bed. Is that really what you want? And that's certainly an awkward situation for him and for us. And it's very awkward. There's been an occasion where I had to open a bank account. Paul and I had to open a bank account. And it was certainly an awkward situation, walking to the bank and saying, my partner and I want to open a joint bank account, and hearing, is this a business account, a partnership? It would just be a lot easier to describe the situation. It might not make those individuals, make it less awkward for those individuals, but it would crystallize it more. To be able to say, my husband and I are here to check in for our room. My husband and I want to open a checking account.
Are you ever confronted with situations where you're asked to describe your marital status?
Yes.
And what do you do in those situations?
Well, those are very awkward situations because as an individual who's very proud of his relationship and has been in a committed relationship for almost 9 years, I proudly wear my ring on my left hand to signify that. And it's very common if we're out at a work function or a gathering with friends that someone identifies the ring and will say, oh, how long have you been married? Or what does your wife do? Questions of that awkward nature, and leaving me to have to deliver the news that I am a gay man and that my husband or domestically partnered friend is works in the fitness industry. And that kind of creates an additional awkwardness in the conversation.
Now, assume that the state of California continues to tell you that you can't get married to someone of the same sex. Might that lead you to desire to get married and marry somebody of the opposite sex?
No.
Why not?
I have no desire to be with a member of the opposite sex.
Do you think if somehow you were able to be forced into a marriage with somebody of the opposite sex, that that would lead to a stable, loving relationship?
Again, no.
Your Honor, I have no more questions.
Very well. Mr. Rock,
No questions,
cross-examination?
no questions, Your Honor.
No cross-examination? Very well. Then, Mr. Zarrillo, sir, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we call as our second witness Mr. Paul Katami.
Very well.
Raise your right hand, please. Paul Katami, called as a witness for the plaintiffs herein, having been first duly sworn, was examined and testified as follows.
Yes, I do.
State your name, please,
Paul Katami,
and spell your last name.
Katami,
And your first name?
Paul.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Katami.
Good morning.
Could you tell the court a little bit about yourself? How old are you?
I'm 37 years old.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up here in San Francisco.
And do you have any siblings?
I do.
How many?
I have an older sister and an older brother.
And where do your parents live?
Well, my father lives here in San Francisco, and my mother lives in Santa Clara, California.
Where did you go to school?
You want the whole rundown?
Summarize it.
I went to school here at St. Anne's of the Sunset, and then to St. Ignatius College Preparatory for boys in the city. Then I went to Santa Clara College, and then I went to UCLA for graduate school.
And what degrees do you have?
Well, the highest degree is a Master of Fine Arts.
Where are you employed?
Currently employed at Equinox Fitness.
And what do you do there?
I'm a manager of group fitness.
Now, you were sitting in the courtroom when Mr. Zarrillo described your relationship, were you not?
I was.
And we don't have to go through again how long that's gone on, but I would like you to tell me whether or not you would like to be married as well.
I would, most definitely.
Incidentally, did you try to get married in California?
We did not.
Did you go apply for a marriage license?
Yeah, that we did.
And what happened when you applied for the marriage license?
Oh, we were denied that license.
When was that?
That was in May of 2009.
Why did you want to get married?
Well, there are many reasons. I think the primary reason for me is because I've found someone that I love and I know I can dedicate the rest of my life to. And when you find someone who's not only your best friend, but your best advocate and supporter in life, it's the natural next step, for me to want to be married to that person.
Do you think that if you were able to get married, that would in any way change your relationship with Mr. Zarrillo?
Oh, yeah, I think it would.
In what way?
Well, being married allows us access to the language. Being able to call him my husband, it's so definitive. You know, it changes our relationship. I mean, we currently struggle in certain circumstances about what to call each other. See, we both dislike lover. You know, it's a challenge, but I mean, husband is definitive. It's something that everybody understands. And there's no subtlety to it. It's absolute. And you know, it also comes with a modicum of respect and understanding that your relationship is not temporal. It's not new. It's not something that could fade easily. I mean, it's something that you've dedicated yourself to and you're committed to.
Mr. Zarrillo talked about the desire to have children. I'd like to ask you, what are your views about having children?
I would love to have a family.
And why haven't you so far?
Well, I think the timeline for us has always been marriage first, before family, for many reasons. But for us, marriage is so important because it solidifies the relationship. And, you know, we gain access to, again, the language that it's global, where it won't affect our children in the future. You know, they won't have to say my dad and dad are domestic partners, because, you know, not everyone knows exactly what a domestic partnership is. So by having access to that language, again, it makes it definitive. You know, and beyond the language, having a marriage would grow our relationship. It represents us to our community and to society. And by raising a family and knowing what our parenting skills would be like, we would want our children to be protected from any awkwardness or anything like that. I mean, we want to focus on raising our kids.
Mm-hmm. Do you think your children would be at a disadvantage if you were not married and if they could not describe their parents as being married?
To a certain extent, I do. I believe that children that are not in a married home are just as susceptible to awkward discussions or whatever it might be in schools, outside of school. So I do believe that a marriage creates a more stable home for children. I mean, in our case, that's what we believe. We need to be married before we have kids.
Do you think that whether you're married or not affects the relationship you have with Mr. Zarrillo? I mean, to have the broader community, or to the people you meet and the people you deal with?
Objection calls for expert testimony.
I think that this goes again to the state of mind of the witness.
I can safely say that if I were married to Jeff, that I know the struggle that we have validating ourselves to other people would be diminished and potentially eradicated. I know how I felt when people have asked an LLC or an S corporation, you know, no, not my business partner, my partner. You know, the puzzled look because we're gay. Unless you have to deal with that, unless you have to go through a constant validation of self, and there's no way to really describe how it feels. And I'm a proud man. I'm proud to be gay. I'm a natural-born gay. I love Jeff more than I love myself. And being excluded in that way, it's so incredibly harmful to me. I can't speak as an expert. I can speak as a human being that's lived it.
Now, you say you're a naturally born gay. Does that mean you've always been gay?
As long as I can remember, yeah.
Have you always been openly gay?
I have not.
When did you come out?
Well, it was a gradual process. I struggled with it quite a bit. And being surrounded by what seemed everything heterosexual, I mean, you know, you tend to try and want to fit in. And because when you're considered different from the norm, you're subject to all kinds of issues and situations that you want to avoid, that you shouldn't have to deal with in life. So as hard as you try, and I did, I tried to identify. I tried to, but I succumbed to peer pressure. I had a girlfriend in high school because you needed to have one to go to the prom or to the game or whatever it might be. So these pressures won over my being at the time. So in high school, I was able to confide in a few friends, and I don't think it was necessarily Well, and we all think no one knows, but they kind of always do. So when you confide in friends and family, they're like, well, yeah, we're just waiting for you to be ready. And I was never a big believer in presenting myself as gay as an issue or a problem. I never wanted to sit someone down and say, I have a serious thing to tell you, as if it were some deep, dark secret that it was a bad thing in my life. Because many times in those instances in high school and college, being gay is associated with something that's undesirable. Oh, that's so gay. That's me. So I'm in that category now. So it's very difficult. Mm-hmm. But I found friends that I trusted and family that I trusted, and I was able to come out in a gradual process. And I always told myself that I would come out in a way that was exemplary to who I was. I wasn't going to present it as a problem or something that, even though I had struggled with it and fought with it for many years, I was going to put a good face on it and say, look, listen, this is my boyfriend, and he's coming home from Thanksgiving. And that would lead to the discussion.
I bet it would.
I'm sorry, huh?
I just said, I bet it would.
Well, yeah. But it was, and just again, in that effort of trying to identify surely who I was versus leaving any speculation that it was not who I really truly was as a person.
Have you experienced discrimination as a result of being gay?
I have.
Can you give me some examples?
Well, one example that I remember very clearly is the first time in college with some gay friends going to my first establishment, my first gay establishment, like a bar or a restaurant socially. Mm-hmm. And we were in an outdoor patio, and rocks and eggs came flying over the fence of the patio. And we were struck by these rocks and eggs, and there were slurs. And again, we couldn't see who these people were, but we were definitely hit. And it was a very sobering moment because I had just accepted as well as that was part of our struggle. That was part of what we would have to deal with. And it was very clear to me because I was finally comfortable in my skin. And it was just a constant reminder that you're still going to be dealing with these issues. More currently, discussions and amicable arguments, if that's not an oxymoron, dealing over certain rights. Particularly, Prop 8 has led to a lot of discussions, intense discussions, about my rights and why I should be able to get married. And a lot of those discussions included language like, well, what's the big deal? Why do you care? Don't you get most of the same rights anyway? And other emotional responses like, well, marriage is not for you people anyway. And once again, it goes back to that place where you hear that, and regardless of how proud you are, unless you've experienced that moment, regardless of how proud you are, you still feel a bit ashamed. And I shouldn't have to feel ashamed. Being gay doesn't make me any less American. It doesn't change my patriotism. It doesn't change the fact that I pay taxes and I own a home and I want to start a family. But in that moment, being gay means I'm unequal. I'm less than. I am undesirable. I've been relegated to a corner. And I'm tired of living life that way. I'm tired of those constant reminders because I don't think of myself as a bad person. I don't think of myself as someone who needs to be put in a corner and told that, you're different. It's not for you. Well, it is for me.
Mm. And what were the circumstances when somebody said marriage isn't for you or whatever it was that you said?
Well, I was paraphrasing, but there were some other choice words that I've probably forgotten. That particular incident was in traffic in Los Angeles. And as you know, that's like having coffee with someone in the car next to you. So you deal with sitting next to this person over and over again for many miles. And I noticed this person had a Yes on 8 campaign sticker on the bumper sticker, and I was like, oh, great. Yeah. And I just thought to myself, I just want to see who this person is. Because this campaign sticker had an image that was disturbing to me. It was, it was in the middle of this. And I just pulled up and I looked over and I got a distinctive, what? Kind of look back. And I simply said, I just disagree with your bumper sticker. And she said, well, marriage is not for you people anyway. And I thought, God, do I have a gay flag on my car? I mean, like, what's going on? How does she even know that I am a gay individual? And normally, I think I'm pretty good at being able to retort and, come back with, just something to support myself. But I was in shock. I remember getting home and telling Jeff, I lost every, I just couldn't even respond. And I was like, really? Like, I don't know. I just said I disapprove. I should have the right to disagree. And this person turns to me and says, no, you don't have that right. No, you don't have the right to get married, nor should you. It rocks you to your core.
What was that image on the bumper sticker that you said was disturbing to you?
Well, I remember it was yellow, the blue, yellow, green bumper sticker, and it had like an image that looked like a parent and a child, and they were connected. And again, I haven't seen it for quite some time, but I remember there being a child, the two figures, parent-child type thing. And it just reminded me of the use of children in the campaign that frustrated me and I disagreed with.
When you say the use of children in the campaign, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. This one's a tough one because protect the children is a big part of the campaign. And when I think of protecting your children, you protect them from people who will perpetrate crimes against them. People who might get them hooked on a drug or a pedophile or some person that you need protecting from. You don't protect them from an amicable person or a good person. You protect yourself from things that can harm you physically or emotionally. It's so insulting. Even the insinuation that I would be a part of this category. I'm so far away from this category. But to lump this issue into protect your family, protect your children, that invokes to me that we're some sort of perpetrator, that my getting married to Jeff is going to harm some child somewhere. And it's so damning. It's so angering because I love kids. You put my nieces and nephews up on the stand right now, I'd be the cool uncle, right? And to think that you had to protect someone from me, from Jeff, from our friends, and from our community. There's no recovering from that. There's no recovering from that. And then to back it up by saying, oh, but these kids will learn about you. Well, they learn about a lot of things in school. So I say be a parent. Talk to your children about it. But don't point your finger at me and put me in that category because I'm so far from that category.
Well, let me show you some of the things that you may be referring to, Your Honor. At this time, I would offer Plaintiff Exhibit 99, which is one of the campaign videos, and I offer it subject to the reservations of objection that the defendants have already reserved.
99?
Yes.
Your Honor, I may be mistaken, but I don't believe this is on the list as an exhibit that's going to be used in connection with this witness.
It may have been on the list.
It appears that it was identified last night for the very first time.
What I have is, it's a Protect Marriage Com video entitled It's Already Happened.
Yes, Your Honor.
Hold on one second, Your Honor.
Very well.
I want to verify this with Ms. Moss that we have in fact received this. Your Honor, to the extent that it was exchanged last night, it's late. It was supposed to be disclosed on January 6th. We got it, if at all, last night, outside the scope of your direct order in that regard.
The order with respect to identifying the exhibits to be used with a witness, is that it?
Yes, Your Honor.
It is on the plaintiff's exhibit list, which was filed on the 7th?
Your Honor, I think it was disclosed at the appropriate time. If I can just...
You're offering it subject to the objection that
Yes,
counsel
exactly.
just
Yeah,
made.
exactly,
Very
yes.
well. Look, we'll, subject to that objection, Exhibit 99, plaintiff's Exhibit 99.
Thank you. May we play that now? Now, when you see the line that there that says "protect our children, restore marriage," how does that make you feel?
Well, again, it goes to speak to, I mean, what are you protecting your children from? I mean, to me, are you protecting them from the knowledge that certain people exist and desire certain rights? I mean, if that's what you're protecting them from, then maybe the word protect should be considered. To me, the threat that's implied is insulting. And I think there are ways to convey a message without potentially demonizing a group of people or creating fear around a certain group of people. I mean, I just think it's unfair. I think it's very unjust.
Your Honor, I would offer at this time another video, which is Plaintiff's Exhibit 401. It's the video stand-up for Proposition 8, and I would offer it again to the subject, the same objections that the defendants have reserved earlier today.
We don't object, Your Honor. Subject to the standing relevance objections?
Very well. Well, what that means is that excuse me?
Your Honor, excuse me?
What's that?
I'm sorry, we do want to preserve an objection based on the fact that it was identified late. It was supposed to be identified within 48 hours of the witness, which exhibits were going to be related to the particular witness on the stand.
Well, Your Honor, I think
Very
that...
well, I understand. What I think is probably fair under these circumstances is that the witness will have to remain available for any questions that the proponents may wish to propound to this witness and related to the exhibit that's been designated in less than the 48 hours.
Your Honor, I believe it was designated on January 6th, and I believe we can demonstrate that.
All right.
We'll deal with them offline.
If that is the case, then that would resolve the matter. If it's not the case, what I think is fair for both sides is to have the witness remain available so the witness can be examined with respect to any late designated documents.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right?
I hate to interrupt, but is this monitor supposed to be working? Because it's not. I was watching over Your Honor's shoulder. Sorry.
Is it okay to play, Your Honor?
What's that?
You can publish it?
Yes.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but my understanding initially that the exhibit was going to be introduced was 99, and that the exhibit that was actually played was Plaintiff's Exhibit 401.
No, I don't think so. We just played 99. We just played 99, and now we are going to offer, and have just offered 401. We're not going to play 401. We have not played 401 yet. We have played 99.
Okay, thank you. Then in that case, Exhibit 401 was not disclosed at all. It is not in the email that's dated January 10th.
Your Honor, it's noon. I think we can demonstrate to them that we disclosed this on January 6th, but this is a campaign video. Everybody knows what these videos are. Your Honor, if I could just have a moment.
All right. Why don't you just take a moment to consult with your colleagues, and then we'll proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Exhibit 99, the one we already played, was properly disclosed on January 6th. Exhibit 401 was not. So 401 is an exhibit that they
Are you
have.
withdrawing 401?
No, I just think this is a situation in which it would be appropriate to play 401 for the witness. We'll keep the witness available if they've got any questions about it. But it's a video from the campaign. It's a video featuring Ron Prentice, chairman of the ProtectMarriage.com. It's one that everybody knows about. This isn't a surprise. There is no prejudice. I apologize for the inadvertent omission of the document from the list, but I don't think there's any prejudice. I think it would facilitate the orderly examination to introduce it and play it at this time.
Counsel.
Your Honor, your order is very clear that exhibits are not identified, shall not be used at trial. It certainly is a surprise to us that this video would be used, and it is a surprise. And certainly, if we knew it was going to be used, we could prepare accordingly. But your pretrial order serves a very distinct purpose, and our position is that it should be enforced.
Well, it does serve a useful purpose in view of the fact that this is a campaign statement that was made by your client. But what is the prejudice to your client showing it to be used and then holding their witness for any examination with respect to that particular exhibit for at least 48 hours, which would essentially rectify any prejudice that your client may have suffered? Isn't that a cure?
Your Honor, it is a cure to a certain degree. However, our objection would stand. And of course, you're free to proceed accordingly.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that.
It's fine, you know that.
So why don't we proceed on that basis? I will urge both sides to please make sure you check the exhibit list and be sure that you turn them in complete and up to date. I realize you've been working hard preparing the case for trial, but we're only on the first day, and there are bound to be a few slips along the way. But it would appear, given the nature of this particular exhibit, that there would be it wouldn't appear, given the nature of this particular exhibit, that there'd be any great prejudice to your client allowing it to be viewed. But if there is, the witness will have to remain available to answer questions.